Hi pals, it's me, Artie, there in pronouns only, and my video for this week is my rewatch of Ghost Whisperer led me very early on to upsetting the dog, to the autistic representation in this show. Wow, it's bad. Well, I mean, like, okay, no, it is bad. There's definitely concrete things that are terrible about this representation. So I thought I'd just get into explaining a bit of what happened in this episode. I'm talking about why it sucks. A quick little explanation for anyone who is not familiar with Ghost Whisperer. But basically, this is a show centered around a woman called Melinda Gordon who lives in Grandview, and she has seen ghosts her whole life. Her family seems to genetically just have this seeing ghosts thing going on, because her mum can also see ghosts, even though her mum tends to just ignore it as much as possible, doesn't want to deal with it. It's caused her more problems than anything else, etc. Melinda's grandma is the one that taught her all about seeing ghosts, helping ghosts, etc. And then also later on in like series 3, I think, we find out that Melinda's father was also a ghost whisperer. So this show is very early 2000s. Like, just putting it out there. I feel like it's kind of like a combination between Charmed and Gilmore Girls, because it has the same sort of early 2000s as both of these shows. It has the sort of paranormal aspects of Charmed, but it also has the small town vibe of Gilmore Girls. So this episode is early in season 2. It is episode 4, and it all starts with just going to another estate sale. Melinda owns an antique store. I forgot to mention that in my quick synopsis of what this show kind of is. She owns an antique store and sells stuff. So she has to go and buy these antiques from somewhere. So this episode starts with an estate sale where suddenly these really beautiful painted wooden like toys, you find out later it's basically a puzzle. They think these are like just wooden toys initially. They just appear at the estate sale, and nobody recognizes them. Nobody knows that they were there. Nobody realizes they were put out. To Melinda's eye, because she also kind of gets visions from these ghosts and stuff, these toys glow, they pulse, and then she also sees the face of a ghost in one of the paintings on these toys. She puts them in the back of her shop because she's not ready to like put them out yet for sale. And then there's this banging noise, and she can't ignore it. And so the ghost basically doesn't look at her much. He's playing with the sleeves of his jumper over his hands, and he is hitting these toys on the table rhythmically. It's always the same rhythm and timing. He doesn't speak with his voice. When she speaks to him, he throws the toys, smashes some of her glassware and ceramics, and then the toys all fly back into the box. Melinda initially thinks he is deafblind because he doesn't make eye contact or respond normally. Back at her house, Melinda thinks that the ghost wants her to destroy the toys because she has a vision of two people fighting, and then the ghost appears again, is smacking the toys on the floor, and even Melinda's husband Jim can actually see these toys being hit on the floor. So they decide to try burning these toys. It doesn't work. The ghost makes them rematerialize back in Melinda and Jim's kitchen. And Jim is the one who sees them there first. And to Melinda, they are glowing again. The ghost appears for a moment and he holds his ears and screams. Melinda goes to the ghost professor man that she has become friendly with, Professor Payne. Is that his name? Yeah, Payne. And then she goes back to the flea market to see if the lady who sold them to her actually even remembered them, or if they appeared like out of nowhere. And then the ghost makes another toy materialize in front of them before Melinda leaves the estate sale. She then has another vision of the house being painted on the ornament. She can kind of at least connect now that the ghost, or someone close to the ghost, was making these toys. She uses her new friend Delia, who is an estate agent, to access some kind of house data thing to try and work out the house that she's seeing in these visions, and like where it is, so she can go there. She's looking through the listings and stuff at home and all the photos, and her husband says, well, you know, at least he's communicating with you now through the ornaments. And she's like, oh yeah, we are best friends. He won't speak to me, look at me, or acknowledge my presence. She then drives to the house after she's found it. During the day, she didn't just go at night, but like when she's found the house, she drives there, and then she hears that same thumping noise that the ghost was making with the toys. She finds a woman rocking in a chair, and next to her is the body of the ghost. The lady doesn't speak or make eye contact either. Melinda finds out that they are Christine and Dennis. She goes back into the house to talk to Dennis, but his only vocal communication is copying parts of her previous sentences, like asking her name. She doesn't clock onto like that this is what he was doing, and just gets really annoyed with him. She's annoyed about why he can't understand her, and it's the other way around, babe. You're not understanding him, he's understanding you. He's still trying to communicate. You're just not listening, you're not paying attention. Apparently Dennis was poisoned, and Melinda is like, ugh, why didn't you tell me? Like, this is something that she does with quite a lot of ghosts. She gets really annoyed with them, even though it's like, you know, it's your job to help these people. It's, you know, that this is how ghosts are. You know, this is how they struggle and try to work out how to communicate with you, XYZ. Why are you getting so pissed at them? And yeah, they're wondering why he led them back to the house with Christine and Dennis still there. And they're querying, you know, are they worried about Christine, or is it to do with his death, how he died? Melinda decides to go talk to Christine awkwardly in a psych ward. Or like it seems like a psych ward. I don't think it's a particularly like specialist autism service. But basically, Christine was just sitting on her bed stimming. Like, I can't remember exactly what she was doing. I think she was shaking her hands, like hand flapping, maybe rocking as well still. The doctor comes in like,
"Oh, bitch, she's autistic. Are you new here?"
where you been? And she said it would take a while for Christine's communication skills to get back to where they were pre-traumatic event. This is something that I thought was like actually quite a decent little nugget of information and representation, because it's like, it's kind of showing that spiky profile and how your needs are dependent on the day a lot of the time, and how your ability to support yourself and your access needs can vary so much depending on what's happened to you in a day, or that could have more permanently disrupted your skills and coping strategies. But Melinda is so dim. Like, it's really painful watching this episode with her, to be honest. She's like, I thought she didn't suffer any physical damage. It's like, she didn't. Nobody said she did, bitch. Nobody said she suffered physical damage. And the doctor's like, this kind of changes a lot for an autistic person to process. And Melinda's like, wait, did you just say that Christine is autistic? And the doctor's like, yes, bitch. The doctor takes her on a tour of the facility, which is basically a group of Astrid Murder in Paris cosplayers. Pretty much, they are all that particular brand of autistic person with very similar acting choices. The doctor says, as you can see, they like games, puzzles, pacing, hand flapping, rocking back and forth. They are all coping mechanisms for people with autism. There are high functioning people with autism who have learned to behave in a more socially acceptable way. Again, I think that was like a reasonably decent way of explaining that too, although we don't see any. We don't really see any. A lot of them are loners. They relate better to objects than they do people. They don't like to talk. And then Linda also goes, "I'll look you in the eye." And it's like, okay, chill. You can like chill out. You don't need to be a bitch. Like, why? And the doctor carries on saying they don't follow a lot of our social rules. Christine and Dennis had lived together since their 20s, so maybe about 10 years, I'm assuming. And then Melinda says they were a couple. And the doctor says Dennis took care of both of them. I assume the high functioning label was intended for Dennis when watching this show, because it's not particularly clear what they mean by high functioning. Because I mean, I would still say that Dennis is a very similar representation of autism to Astrid, except he doesn't really verbally speak much at all. And like I said, he more so communicates with echolalia, like echoing back things other people have just said. But he was more, I guess, physically capable of doing things around the house to take care of himself and Christine. They had a home care worker as well who came once a week, and then they get another ornament clue appear at this state home thing. We then also get a flashback to Christine returning home one day, seeming more functional. She couldn't find Dennis until she found him on the floor, and that's when she has like a massive meltdown and thrashed around in his office, which is where he died. And that's why the house looks like there had been some kind of like home invasion, is because she had a meltdown in that room, which as well, like this is why it can really frustrate me, is that a lot of thought was clearly put into this episode, because it isn't quite the typical autistic representation that we usually see, I guess, as particularly as it was two autistic people living together and being a couple, and taking care of each other. You know, a lot of autistic people tend to be portrayed as entirely loners, or like their whole plot in the show is becoming less of a loner and more of a normal person and all this sort of thing. And you know, they have included that there was a home care aide who did come by at least once a week. That, you know, they didn't require round the clock care, but they did have somebody to support them with certain things that needed to be done. And then, yeah, also the inclusion of meltdowns and making some of these things look a certain way to like a neurotypical eye, to a neurotypical audience, particularly as, you know, a lot of this would have probably involved police as well, and particularly as Christine is also a Black woman. I think there could have been a lot more detailed exploration into some of those elements, you know, like how they probably would have arrested Christine rather than put her in a home or a care unit or whatever this thing is, because it looked like a home invasion, or they'd had a fight with each other. And, you know, the pretty typical racialization, or the aspect of being a racialized person and the way police act towards racialized people, but especially disabled, racialized / Black people. But yeah, like it's a lot more vague on those points, obviously, but it definitely could have been more in depth. And I guess this is also why it makes a reasonably interesting episode to dip into and discuss, because there's elements of it that are maybe lightly implied than other things that have just been completely ignored or missed for the utopian aspect of this show. We then get a view of what happened to Dennis, but in reverse. He was like cooking or baking, and basically he accidentally left the gas of the oven on and didn't have windows open, and he basically just killed himself by accident. However, Christine wasn't harmed by the carbon monoxide because she opens all of the windows when she comes home. I'm assuming from work. I can't remember what it was, but when she comes home every day, her routine is that she opens all of the windows and then proceeds to do whatever else. So that's why she wasn't harmed by the gas, because she had already opened those windows, which had started to ventilate the house and make it safe for her to be in. Unfortunately, that was too late for Dennis. Melinda wants to know why Dennis is still here, like as a ghost. Because Christine is now safe. What else is there? And then Jim fucking says, what I want to know is, why is Dennis still autistic? If he's dead, he should be cured, right? So this is the bit that I saw posted on TikTok that I didn't remember from watching the show years ago, because obviously many years ago, before I knew I was autistic, this wouldn't have even occurred to me. I probably wouldn't have even recognized these characters as autistic. Whereas like when I was watching it this time round, I was like, they're autistic. They're autistic. Got the tism in here. Yeah. So yeah, seeing that TikTok, I was like, why would that even be necessary to include? But yeah, so her response to Jim asking that question is, well, technically, yes, every soul is perfect. When they cross over, the handicaps they lived with in life no longer affect them. Also, the use of the word handicaps. Fucking hell. But if they're earthbound, sometimes they cling to the familiar. They can't let go of who they were. This is awful. This is bad. Terrible. I hate this. So yeah, my jaw on the floor. Then there's like a little info dump about echolalia and what it is. You know, she's like, oh yeah, he's been mimicking me. It's when they echo whatever you say, so you know that they can hear you even if they can't respond. Echolalia. I don't know if that's necessarily the entire definition of echolalia, so I'm gonna quickly Google it. I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure it's basically just the repetition of words or phrases spoken by someone else. I don't think it necessarily always includes it as like a way of letting you know they are listening / understand you. I think sometimes it's also just a stim. A lot of my echolalia is just stimming because I can't shut up. The only other aspect to it that hasn't really been explained is like this behavior is automatic and non-voluntary, so you don't mean to do it, which yeah is kind of how my echolalia stimming works. And there's a few other categorizations of echolalia as well. Immediate or delayed. If the repeated word or phrase happens right after someone else says it, it's immediate. If time passes between the moment someone says the word or phrase and the action is repeated, it's delayed. Action of repeating. It is repeating it. Oh my god. Fucking hell. I'm not saying that again. You can get the gist. Communicative or semi-communicative. Is communicative if the word or phrase repeated has meaning within a conversation, i.e. it answers a question, or the reason for repetition isn't clear, is semi-communicative. Unmitigated or mitigated, the repetition matches exactly how another person said it, so unmitigated, or there are changes to the intonation, which is the tone or pitch of speech, which is mitigated. Then there's ambient or echoing approval. Ambient is repeating words from the surrounding environment, like television, for example. Echoing approval is repeating words in a positive or negative tone in response to a question asked to either themselves or someone else. So like they tried, but they kind of missed it on that. They missed it on that one. Jim says, so all this time he has been communicating with you just in his own way. Yes, congratulations, the $1 million answer. Finally, somebody acknowledged the fact that actually Melinda was not paying any fucking attention. Christine was actually taken away from her mother and put into a home when she was a child. The professor wants to do tests, Professor Payne, Melinda's friend, wants to do tests on Melinda, who says she's not a science experiment, which is very ironic with this plot. Christine names the paintings on the ornaments. She tells a little story with/of the ornaments. And then, yeah, this is sort of around the point where I was like, oh yeah, money's on, bets are on that the lady who sold the ornaments was actually Christine's mum. Spoiler alert, it is her. Dennis found Christine's mother before he died. Melinda tries to tell Christine she's wrong with the puzzle. Like, shut the fuck up, it's a puzzle. Basically, the other side of these toys, which are a puzzle, is Christine's mum's face that's been painted. And then, yeah, so then Melinda goes to find the lady to talk to her about it. And it's like, you know, here we're about to make you feel so bad for the mum. Boo. You know, she said we don't know much about autism, like back when Christine was born and was being diagnosed. And also, I was just thinking, you know, you still know next to fuck all about autism when the show was being made, so great. But also, like, I'll give the show some props for specifically representing a Black autistic woman, because can't seem to get that to happen these days on telly. It's been a year. It's been over a year, I think, since I made the video about Dylan from Casualty, and he had his whole autism assessment plot. And they just haven't told us if he's autistic or not. And he's a white guy. But yeah, so her mum's like, can you imagine having a child that won't look at you or smile, that cries every time you touch her? I took Christine to a doctor and they said it was my fault that she's autistic because I was a bad mother. I wasn't the only one. They said that we were refrigerator mothers because we were so cold and frigid, and that our children had no one to turn to for comfort. So they turned inside of themselves, and then they wouldn't even let her visit Christine when they took her and put her in whatever facility they put her in at the time. And Christine's mother saw Christine and Dennis once as adults, but it ended in a fight between her and Christine. Also on that note as well, America is plain. You know, RFK or whoever the fuck, RFK Jr., something. Man with 3 letters for a name that I can't remember who he is, but the vice president, I guess, or was when I'm filming this, because I am pre-recording this a little bit. You know, he is basically doing everything possible to get rid of vaccines, doing everything possible to spread misinformation about how autism exists / develops. You know, there have been more articles coming out saying that, you know, pregnant women aren't even allowed to take Tylenol and shit, which is not the cause of autism, but also, of course, the vaccines and stuff as well, also not the cause of autism. All of those studies have been debunked, and lots of people are like, okay, so when they can't blame vaccines for autism anymore, who are they going to blame? And everyone's been responding, the mothers. And it's like, this episode was out in the early 2000s, like maybe 2003, maybe a bit later. And they were blaming the mothers, but they were especially blaming and harming and penalizing Black mothers / racialized mothers. Like, I'm sure plenty of white women were not being treated the way that this woman was treated. They will also go for poor people. Melinda tells her, you know, she has to keep trying with her daughter. Her daughter needs her. Melinda takes her to visit her daughter. And she says, it doesn't make one bit of difference if I'm here or not. And then Dennis's ghost appears and says, you know, that's not true. Say love is patient. And like, not going to lie, I thought there was going to be a really poorly placed The Help reference here. Like with how some of these more difficult topics have been approached, I really thought there was going to be like a really terrible The Help reference in there. But either way, the mum still fucks off. She walks out. Then they say like some weird ableist things again. You know, she doesn't know how to love. Her boyfriend was teaching her. And I'm like, you're also gross. And then someone's like explaining love to Dennis. And it's like, bruh. Yeah, the end of this was so painful. It didn't need to be that painful. But then, yeah, her mum comes back. Christine slides a puzzle piece over to her mum, basically inviting her to join in the activity. And then, yeah, at the end, Dennis looks at Melinda and smiles and then passes over into the light. And then that's the episode. Wow. Yeah, so like, happy Halloween. Supernatural Seasons. What the fuck was that episode? So yeah, like I said, there were some elements of it that were definitely better than I expected them to be and were more educational. But overall, it was just, especially because we were, you know, always from Melinda's point of view. Melinda was really just showing herself to be a fucking asshole, douchebag. Like, yeah, she was really embarrassing. Jim was really embarrassing. I can't do it anymore. Can't do this. It's so yeah, that was yeah, there you go. That was the whole thing. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Go and watch one of my other videos. I mean, if you're not familiar with Patience and Astrid Murder in Paris, I think you should go check that video out that I made about that show. Because yeah, I did reference that performance of autism for a reason. This was a lot for me, honestly. This was a lot. It supports the channel to go watch another video. Anyway, that was all from me this week. That's all from me this week. I'll see you next week. Bye.